Magandang gabi po mga kababayan kong Pilipinas. At good evening to all that are now tuned in to our Katipunan channel. And let me first thank our host in this whole series, my good friend Mr. Creighton Cody Jones, who almost by accident drops by the Philippines and we bump into each other, and somehow knowing his expertise and familiarity with many things that we've been working on over the years together in the movement, in the Larouche movement, I thought that it might be good. As a matter of fact, very good for many of us Filipinos to be exposed to some of these things that are necessary. The program that has been entitled was it Politics and Science or Science and Politics? But whatever it is, there is a connection, and as I'm sure Cody has been presenting to everybody in this whole series, and I advise everybody to follow the series. This is getting to be more and more clear to all, and to see the importance of our getting more aware of these discoveries of truths. The sad part about people claiming to be educated, they don't realize sometimes that they are miseducated. But the important thing is, how do we discover truth? Because this the process of discovering truth is the real type of education. And this is what we hope to be able to bring to your attention. Now, I was asked by Cody a while back to give a little background on the Bataan nuclear power plant, and where does the Philippines stand when it comes to nuclear energy. I can give you a whole series and whole history, which is kind of sad, but briefly, about 35 years ago, we were just about ready to start our first nuclear power plant. It's a nuclear power plant built by the Westinghouse, and it had to actually run for 2 weeks on a test run, and given the go signal by the regulating agency and of course the IAEA. However, because of politics, somehow there was an upheaval, and there was a change of government, and the new government headed by the Aquinos saw fit that this plant was not going to run because it was built by the previous president, President Marcos. It's sad because what had happened then, and we don't have to go through this by proving it, but many people will experience a 35-year deterioration of the quality of life of the Filipinos, and not just the quality of life, a retardation of our capability to be among the most productive nations in the world. Our economy at that time was being geared to be a productive and a producing economy, but instead, as soon as Aquinos took over and took these economists, who I quite loosely call econoquacks, reversed the type of economy from a producer economy to a service economy, which meant that these people didn't find a need for us to go into energy development, specifically nuclear energy. We had a nuclear power plant which is in Bataan, which was ready to fire. It says 620 megawatt plant, and soon after there was going to be a sister reactor that was being built beside it, another 620 megawatt plant, which would have made given us about a 1,000 megawatt plant operating by now. Simultaneous to this whole effort of ours, development of nuclear energy, South Korea also had Westinghouse put up a similar and identical nuclear power plant in Seoul. Now, they were able to fire up their nuclear power plant in 1984. We were ready to fire up ours by 1985. But President Marcos said something had happened in the U.S. in a nuclear power plant in the U.S., which claimed that there was a leak, and there was a big ballyhoo and campaign that there might have been a nuclear accident in the United States, in 3 Mile Island, I think. And the whole propaganda reached all around the world, which prompted President Marcos, to tell his energy secretary, do not start it, let's make it even stronger. So it took another year and a half before we were really ready to make it stronger. And indeed, they went through the motions and making sure that it was much stronger than what was originally signed for. But then, when we were ready to open it up, somehow people in the United States, specifically George Shultz and his friends, initiated a revolution in the Philippines, and that stopped the whole plan of getting us into the nuclear energy stage. Mr. Marcos had 3 areas for development of energy. One was the hydroelectric, which meant putting up a lot of dams and generating power from the rivers that he was going to put up dams in. And another one was the geothermal. We supposedly had one of the largest geothermal deposits or reserves in the world, comparable to that of the whole of California. And so we went into geothermal energy development. And then, of course, the third one was going to be the nuclear. And this nuclear power plant would have been the third base load type of capability that would have propelled us to a level of agro-industrialization which he envisioned. Not only that, there was a claim at that point, I remember, that the Philippines would be energy self-sufficient by 1990. That is in expectation of the powering up of all of these base load type of power generations. It didn't happen. In the meantime, a country like South Korea, which started its nuclear power plant in 1984, after 35 years now, has 22 nuclear power plants operating. And not only that, they are now exporting nuclear power plants. And it's very easy to compare the kind of economy that South Korea has now, and that of ours. Ours not only has not stopped dead in its tracks, it had retrogressed back to probably even worse than the 1960 levels, if you're going to check on the quality of life index. And on the other hand, the quality of life of other countries that were together with us, at least in the development stage, have gone on forward. No? That's the sad part and the sad story of our nuclear power plant. But there's still good news. The president, President Duterte, in after last 4 or 5 presidents before him, were living through the mothballed nuclear power plant. And the president said, let's start these nuclear power plants, take a look at the Bataan nuclear power plant and study it and see if we can start it. He had two groups of engineers that went there at the request of the Philippine government. One was this South Korean group of scientists and engineers. And then the next one, a year after, was 20 scientists and engineers that were sent by President Putin, to evaluate the status of the Bataan nuclear power plant. And both of those groups have had similar conclusions, that the Bataan nuclear power plant is sound and can be made ready to run within a 12 to 18-month period, and that the amount of investment necessary to get it moving and operating will be less than $1 billion. Now, this was good news to many of the Filipino peoples, especially understanding that right now the Philippines is paying the highest, not one of the highest, but the highest electricity rates in the world. We're paying something like almost 24 US cents per kilowatt hour. Italy is paying something like 23.8 US cents per kilowatt hour. And our friends in the United States pay something like 12 US cents per kilowatt hour. Only 1/2 of what the Philippines is paying. They said before that Japan was among the highest. Japan's electricity rates, probably because of their nuclear power plants, 54 nuclear power plants, they're paying something like 18 US cents per kilowatt hour. But we top them. The Philippines is number one here when it comes to paying the highest electricity rates. Now, what makes it even worse than it sounds is that, example, the U.S. income of the ordinary citizen in the U.S. is about 30 times that of this ordinary citizen in the Philippines, the minimum wage earner. Now, 30 times higher, wherein the burden of electricity, cost of electricity to the U.S. citizen is something like 3% of his salary. On the other hand, here in the Philippines, the burden of electricity cost covers up to 25% of his salary. It is a killer. It is a killer. And sometimes you wonder whether the objective for all of this is to increase mortality in our population, or just incompetence. However, seeing this, there is, of course, a question in as far as what is the reason why this thing has come about? Well, there was a certain president here. His name is Fidel Ramos. Maybe out of ignorance, but probably a mix of ignorance and malice. He turned over the whole private sector to the whole power sector to the private sector, and this meant that the whole private sector took over the power rates Mind you, when private sector, it means like 7 to 8 big companies, which are now earning something like 3.5 trillion pesos every year at the expense of the Filipino citizenry. This is the situation. The need for a more efficient, more effective, cleaner, and reliable energy generation is there. Not only is it there because of the present needs, no, but if we are to look at the future, if we are to look at our needs in the future, if we want to develop the way the president has repeatedly said he wants to go into infrastructure, the real type of infrastructure which we should immediately get into is not roads and bridges. Of course, those things are needed, they'll be useful, but it must be energy and water. And the sooner we can start the Bataan nuclear power plant, the better. Why is this so? We have made a proposal to the president that we can have a nuclear energy development program that will mean that will not cost the government a cent relatively. Why is this so? Because the Bataan nuclear power plant is free of debt. And if it can be run with the minimum investment of $1 billion, that plant can be made to generate enough financial capability to fund another nuclear power plant, one of the SMRs, what they call small and medium scale reactors that are now available. They produce from 200 to 250, 300 megawatts, but they can be constructed within a year and a half to 2 years. Now, if this is debt free, the Bataan nuclear power plant is debt free, and the next one can be financed by the Bataan nuclear power plant, then in 2 years you now have 2 nuclear power plants that will finance the next 2 other nuclear power plants. And in a span of 6 years, we may have 10 nuclear power plants operating. But it is sad that some of our cabinet members in energy and in finance and in economics do not think along these lines. But the president thinks along these lines. It has to be explained to him. I hope we can in the near future. Thank you for allowing me to give this short explanation on the status of the Bataan nuclear power plant and our vision for the future.